Albert Breer. Somehow we make a smooth segue to Albert Breer, the Monday morning quarterback. Albert, thanks for joining us. We've been noodling this around the first 90 minutes of the show. If I had a survey, anonymous survey with members of the media, if they're rooting for Aaron Rodgers to come back or not, how do you think that survey would play out?
I would hope most of us will want to see him come back just because the storyline's an awesome one. The idea that somebody can come back this fast is, in a vacuum, a good story. But on top of that, what could that mean for athletes going forward? If they found something here that got a quarterback back into an NFL game, whatever it is, like a little over 3 months after he tore his Achilles, which, 10, 15 years ago was like a death sentence for a football player. That's awesome, and it's especially awesome for like the bigger guys too. The bigger guys are always the ones that have such a hard time coming back from this. And so I think on a number of different levels, it'd be a good story if he was able to do this. I can't imagine anybody would not want to follow Aaron Rodgers desperately trying to get the Jets back in the playoff picture in a weakened AFC too. Like the AFC is not what we thought it was, which can be part of this as well.
Well, I think you have an altruistic, you have the positive spin on this. It feels like there's members of the media that are either for Rodgers or against. Yeah, that they're for him or against him.
I don't know. That's not our job.
I agree. I understand that. But it feels like people are picking sides with this, or, Rodgers, did he really have a torn Achilles?
Does this come back to like the fact that he's on McAfee every week and some of the controversial stuff he says? I don't know. Look, like my dealings with Aaron have been, pretty positive over the years. I know you've had some too. And, I know that there is that part of it, right? Like the guy likes attention, and it's got to be an interesting thing for Robert Saleh to, get a State of the Union speech every Friday by tuning into McAfee, right? So there's that part of it where I can understand where people would be, a little annoyed or a little worn out by all of it. Look, like, would you really rather watch Tim Boyle play football than Aaron Rodgers? You know what I mean? Like, it's the same as like, would you rather watch Jake Browning play than Joe Burrow? Would you rather watch Dorian Thompson-Robinson play?
But those are all different scenarios. That
they are. But it's like, in the end, isn't like that what this is about?
Well, nobody's rooting for Deshaun Watson to come back. Like, people have rooted against Deshaun Watson or covered him in a slanted way.
I think that's like that's different though. You know what I mean? Like, regardless of what you think of what he did, if you're convinced that he did what he's accused of doing, then I absolutely can understand why somebody might root against him, Like with Aaron Rodgers, it feels more like they just don't like his personality, Like, I don't know, like it feels like different than Deshaun Watson.
Is Mac Jones done in New England?
I think it depends on who the coach is next year. But I think for this year, there's a good chance he is. I think Bailey Zappi goes out and plays well on Sunday and runs the offense and is able to be a distributor out there. He doesn't need to be a world beater, but just gives him a chance and doesn't turn the ball over. My guess would be that, that Mac Jones could be shut down for the rest of the year. And if I'm the Patriots, by the way, like if I'm not starting him on Sunday, I'm not dressing him, because I've seen too many teams make this mistake where it's like, okay, we want to give the kid a reset. We think the wiring's messed up, but we're going to make him the backup. So then the minute like the starting quarterback gets hurt, that whole plan goes up in smoke. It happened with the Jets, right? Like the Jets, the plan was for Zach Wilson to get a real career reset and be able to sit and watch. And like if the Jets were really committed to doing that, they would have made him the third stringer, not the second stringer, because the minute the starter gets hurt, the second stringer is going in, right? So I think with Mac, and the wiring is definitely off. Like, and he is dealing now with, I think, some of the things that Zach Wilson dealt with, where it's a little bit like you can't get right. Like that's what the yips is, right? Like you just can't get right. And I think it's for a variety of different reasons. And I think the right thing for him right now would be to sit down. Whether or not he's done long-term in New England, I think depends on who's coaching the team and who's making the decisions in 2024. And we still don't know who that is.
Okay. If it's Bill Belichick,
I think Mac would be gone. That'd
Okay.
be my guess.
All right. Albert
Yeah.
Breer, the Monday morning quarterback, joining us. Your take on the last couple of days with the Carolina Panthers?
Yeah, I think it's an owner getting his sea legs. I it's interesting because like I had a question in my mailbag this week. It's up on the site. It asked me if he's like the next Snyder. And I think people ignore like how often owners stumble around at the beginning and like it takes a while for them to figure it out. And I think that's become the default thing. Like when an owner comes in and messes things up in the beginning, it's like, oh, well, he's Dan Snyder. Well, I think what often happens is these guys come in and they're so successful in whatever business they're coming from, and they've always been the smartest guy in the room. And then they come into this environment and they think, okay, well, I'll just be able to push all the same buttons I pushed as a real estate tycoon or as a hedge fund manager, and it's going to work. And football doesn't work that way, you know? And so sometimes these guys have to fall on their face a little and get bloodied a little. And I think that's what Tepper's kind of going through right now. And, I think that you can look at the lesson in San Francisco, where, Jed York clashed with Jim Harbaugh and then went through basically like 2 1-year restarts with Jim Tomsula and Chip Kelly. And that place was seen as toxic, like one of the worst organizations in the league. And he had to like basically can control and long contracts to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and say, I trust you guys, go fix it. Yeah. And I think that's sort of where Tepper is right now, is that he's wanted to be involved, but he's not there. He's not in the office every day. He has sort of taken ideas from other organizations and tried to apply them with people that he's bringing in. As a result, Frank Reich hired a coaching staff that maybe he wasn't all that familiar with. They tried to put together an all-star team. That's always a tough thing to make work in football. I think that there hasn't been a cogent like organizational philosophy there.
But could you see Belichick wanting to work for that owner?
If he gives them control, maybe.
Yeah, but
that's the thing.
This guy feels like he wants to, there's a couple. You got Jerry
Well,
Jones.
And that's the thing is like, I don't know because like, it's, what, that's it, Dan, is like a lot of these guys, like they don't buy the team to sit on the sideline. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, So how do you strike that balance where it's like, I think that's the other thing is when these guys first buy these teams, they're gung-ho. They want to be involved in everything. Well, if David Tepper's not there every day, but he's basically operating when he's in the building as if he's there every day, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're in there, like, so he'd come in on Friday for home games and leave Tuesday. What's the most important part of the week for a football team? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? And Tuesday for game plan for coaches. So he's missing all of that, but he's operating as if he's the boss and he's there day to day. Like that's the thing is like, how do you strike the balance between wanting to be involved and wanting to gather information and wanting to be a resource and wanting to use all the business principles that you have, but also like understanding like, I have to delegate some of this. And there's a lot of stuff that I don't know. And there's stuff that I shouldn't really involve myself in. And there are some decisions that I need to farm out to other people. Like to me, like the assembly of the all-star staff was like a big part of it. Like he saw what the Giants did with Brian Daboll, right? Where Daboll brought in some guys he didn't know to coach for him. Well, Daboll went through this like huge process where he had like basically the coaches who were already on staff group interviewing people who were potentially going to come in and work for them. And then he saw what the Niners did, right? Like where the Niners had all of these guys go through and D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh and Mike McDaniel and Martin Mayhew and Rand Carthon, where they were getting draft picks for the scouts and coaches that had come through their system, like, via the incentive structure the NFL set up for minority hiring. Well, that's great, but like, is your goal to hire a good coach or is your goal to get a draft pick on the other end of it? Right. I mean, I think that there were all these ideas that David Tepper had that weren't bad ideas, but he was just like applying them all at once. And I think as a result, you wound up with this coaching staff that really had a big learning curve as far as figuring out how to work together. And then you get in the season and the offense looks like a mess and the defense doesn't match the offense. And now you're not giving the group time to grow together. And like, what are you, So I think that that's going to be like the big thing coming out of this is like, what is the Panthers organizational philosophy? If like in a straight line, like how would you describe what they are? Because up until this point, it feels like they've been a mishmash of ideas, and that's on the owner for not empowering people to set what the organizational structure, philosophy, culture, all of that stuff's going to be.
Jim Harbaugh more attractive to NFL teams this year or last year?
I think he would be this year. I mean, I don't know. Like I think like I don't understand why there hasn't been more interest in him. Like he hasn't gotten an offer the last couple of years, like, and I don't understand why. Like I look, like I understand things didn't end well in San Francisco, right? Like, but I mean, if you look like, so he has built a culture everywhere he went, right? He built a culture everywhere he went that looks exactly the same. Stanford looks the same as the Niners, looks the same as Michigan, right? And he has a certain type of player that is in every one of those that was in every one of those organizations, right? The two college teams and the pro team. And like you put the whole thing together and it's like, this guy's Bill Parcells. Like he comes in, he shakes it up. He knows what he wants it to look like. It looks the same everywhere he goes. They have the same philosophy and culture and the same types of people everywhere he goes. I don't understand why somebody wouldn't want to buy into that, right? Like why somebody wouldn't want that. Now, maybe it's not a 10-year answer. Maybe it's a 4 or 5-year answer. But I mean, look, like I think like if you look at like Michigan, right? Like his team was 6-0 without him on the sideline. And that says something about what he put in place there, right? And I think like, I mean, honestly, Saturday freaking hurt for me, but like what I saw was a staff without its head coach coaching like it was an NFL game, right? Like that was the difference. They won on the margins. They weren't more talented. We'll see that in 5 years. The Ohio State roster had way more NFL, like way more like high-end NFL players on it. What it was, they own the situations, they own the margins, they won on the margins, they played to win that specific game. And so, like they were great on fourth down. They were great on special teams. They won the game with a long field goal. Ohio State missed a long field goal. Ohio State had short punts. They had long punts. They had the trick plays when they needed. They went for it on fourth down. They had the 4-minute drive at the end of the game. And like all of that is part. My point is that all of that is part of what Jim Harbaugh has built. And I can't understand for the life of me why an NFL team would look at that and want that. Could he what were things hard at the end in San Francisco? Yeah, they were. Like they weren't. There was not a great environment in that building. But even when it was really bad, what were they, 9-7 that last year?
I think so.
Isn't that right? I don't know.
I think so.
Maybe I'm the one who's crazy, but
no, Harbaugh's crazy.
Harbaugh's crazy. But so are a lot of these guys.
Yeah. Crazy successful.
But you've dealt with enough of them. How many of them are like you sort of have to have a screw loose, right?
I don't want normal. I mean, he's different. That's what you buy into it.
Is Bill Belichick a normal, well-adjusted human being?
Albert, no, I'm not.
I mean, it's not like it's just yeah, so I think like to me, like I think like he is I felt this way forever. Like I think he's Parcells, right? Like he runs hot, he comes in, he'll shake up, like he'll come in and he'll shake up whatever place he's walking into. He'll change it in short order. Like he may wind up burning people out. And like if you're looking for a guy to be your coach for the next 15 years, probably not it, right? But like I don't know, like the way that he's changed these places and like the trademark he's put on it, like how it just looks a certain way. You know what I mean? It's identifiable. There's no scattershot. Oh, we're going to try this or try. No. It looks like, what that looks like. It's pretty impressive. And I say that, and it hurts me to say that.
Yes, and you being an Ohio State guy, maybe you're happy to get him out of Michigan. Great to talk to you as always. Thank you. Thank you, Albert.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Albert Breer, Monday Morning Quarterback.